Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. We have another webinar here on the subject of moving to Portugal and the residency visas required for this. We're joined once again by Sandra Gomes Pinto, who has been on these Portugalist webinars many, many times before. Sandra, last time I spoke to you, I think it might have been in June. And since then, we've had July and August. And just while people are joining us here, I think it might be interesting to explain a little bit how August works in Portugal. It's a month when things kind of slow down a little bit, and you have to sort of set your expectations a little bit accordingly.
Yes, I will tell you. In Portugal, typically Portugal in August stops completely. Except for us, my team has been booming the whole August. We have been working really, really hard because we had lots of contacts and lots of people. So for my team, you cannot say that because they are working with us and hearing this, and they would, where were our vacations in August? How did the country stop and we didn't? And we always ended up working late. So I think that Portugal stops. You don't expect much. Most people is in the Algarve and on vacations, but this is not the case for our office. We really work hard. Yes, we really have a hard-working discipline in place.
Well, I think that's a very good way of introducing you, Sandra, and your team. And that's certainly been the experience I know a lot of Portugalist readers have had with you, is that, you're a hardworking firm. I get emails from you, I think 7 days a week and throughout the whole of August. So that is not the norm throughout Portugal. So I think people can feel very, very comfortable with your company. So perhaps you could let people know a little bit more about you for those that haven't come across your company before.
So my name is Sandra Gomes Pinto. I'm a lawyer in Portugal for 30 years. I always work with international clients, people investing in Portugal and moving here and also firms. I worked in very well-known litigation cases. I represented firms, big construction firms in Portugal, both in litigation and arbitration. I represented the German government in the renovation of the German school here in Lisbon because they wanted a lawyer that knew German, had international experiences, was very experienced in construction. In these last 8-9 years, I created my own firm. And one of the things that we focus a lot and have an ongoing team working day and night for this, we help people to move to Portugal. Basically, our focus is always the legal side. And as you understand by now, all these visa processes are extremely unstandardized, and there are discretionary powers and different solutions for consulate to consulate, sometimes from person to person. So we help people to navigate, to feel sure, to feel accompanied, to feel they have a trusted partner that will do this together with them. And our idea is that the client or the one that seeks our services always feel supported, never feel alone in the process, and always know they have someone they can count on and will be really interested in helping, that they navigate the process in a flawless way. And also they are guided and supported in Portugal. I think me and my team, I'm 54, one of my purpose, I like people. I like to talk with people. So talking with people in a Zoom, doing webinars, talking to clients, for me, it's not work. It's not a big effort. Of course, I have other things I like to do too. I have a family, but I think for us, this is effortless and this is something we like to do. And that makes things easier. And I believe people notice that they have a sense of a familiarity and friendliness that they can sense. But I think we also can combine that with, from a professional side, to be very accurate, to know exactly what we are doing, and each day trying to do a better job and trying to understand the process better, and also how we can help best people who are relocating here and where the problems are, where the difficulties are. And this is what we try to do each day. We try to make a better job every day, and we are committed to do that. So this is our goal. And just out of curiosity, and this is almost funny, 8 years ago when I started, I had a friend from college that was seated in New York, and she was working in New York. And I said to her, you know what? We have to promote Portugal. We have to make people come to Portugal. Portugal is such a fantastic country. It has fantastic food, the safety, the weather, also the possibilities in terms of business. I think this is a country where there are very many hardworking people. Internet is super. The proficiency in English is great. I think we should promote Portugal. I think definitely we should do. She looked at me and she said, you know what? This is the craziest idea I've heard, because nobody knows where Portugal is. They will have so much, you'll have a very hard time explaining where Portugal is, and that Portugal is different from Spain. They will look at you, say you are a Latina, and you will not move for there. Just to explain them where Portugal is, it's an effort. What a crazy idea. Stubborn as I am, I told her, nevertheless, we will partner the same. I will put you in my sight and we will do something. Of course, she never did. She didn't believe in the subject. But the funny thing is that 8 years after that time, I think the impossible happened. I had nothing to do with it, of course. But it's interesting in terms in Google search in the US, Portugal to move, when people think about moving abroad, Portugal is the country that comes first. So it's funny how things that at a certain pace of time seem completely impossible, and all of a sudden there's a turnaround, and here we are promoting Portugal in the US, and this is a reality and it makes sense. So it's a funny.
Yeah, it has completely changed, hasn't it? And now Portugal is on everybody's radar. As you mention it to anyone abroad, even if they haven't looked into the process, they've heard of people moving to Portugal, and it's the place to move to.
Yes, this year we went to California and we are in the hotel, and all of a sudden the one of the employees of the hotel understood we were Portuguese, and she came to us and said, I'm studying and thinking about moving to Portugal for 5 years. I know everything about Portugal. So it was this kind of reception we had in California, and that was really, really a good experience.
Well, that's great to hear. It's definitely well overdue that Portugal is getting recognized by the rest of the world. So I wanted to say to everybody that there is a Q&A section in your Zoom panel. So if you have questions related to moving to Portugal, you should answer them there and not the chat. That way they can be answered by Sandra's very hardworking team, who will make sure that they're either answered during the webinar or afterwards if there are too many for us to get to. The other thing they'll say is Sandra's very kindly offered a 15-minute free Zoom consultation for anybody, for the first 50 people who get in touch. So I'm going to put her email address in the chat now. If you are thinking about moving to Portugal, you're getting ready to move, email her and use the code Portugalist, and you will be able to take advantage of that free 15-minute consultation. And if you become a client within the next week, I'm told that there are going to be special conditions. So definitely worth getting everything in gear this week. So that email address has gone into the chat now for anyone who's interested. The Q&A section is in the very bottom of your screen if you're using the Zoom app. Sandra, are we ready to get started? I think we're going to start with the D7.
Yes, we are. But first, let me tell you that's always for us a pleasure to partner with you. And we really like your project and the transparency and the way you provide useful information for all those that seek information and valid information in respect to relocate to Portugal or investing to Portugal. So it's a pleasure for us. And thank you for having us here as your partner.
Thank you, Sandra. And it wouldn't be possible to provide transparent information without someone like you to actually provide it. So I appreciate that too. So let's start with the D7 visa. This is, I imagine it must be the most popular visa for moving to Portugal. It's the one that people ask me the most about. But Sandra, could you perhaps just give a brief overview of how this visa works and who it might be suitable for?
Yes, so the D7 visa is a visa that's applicable for all those that have passive income. Passive income meaning rentals, pensions, interests, dividends, royalties. So income they don't have to work for. And this passive income should be foreign sourced. This year we had a client coming to us that would like to do a D7 visa with rentals in Portugal. And that might be a problem. So typically, we have to verify very clearly if such a situation would be possible. Because the general framework of the D7 is that the income, the D7 for the D7 and D8, that the income of the person coming to Portugal must be foreign sourced. So there are, for this client, there are other solutions and other possibilities, and we can manage to create a specific solution that would be acceptable, but not directly with a D7 in this way, not unless we have an assurance from the consulate, which is extremely hard to get, that this would be accepted by them. So the D7 is for all those who have passive income, whereas the D8 is for those who have active income, meaning income that they have to work for, being paid by a foreign entity. Again, this very important idea is that the income has to be foreign sourced. And this is in respect of the nature of the professional relationship they have with a foreign entity. So they can be labor workers, they can be independent contractors, that they can have their own company, they can have whatever you can imagine, as long as it is a professional activity being paid by a foreign entity and irrespective of its source.
Okay.
Yes, as we've talked previously, but perhaps some people might have some doubts in this respect. In terms of, there is a big difference in terms of financial requirement between the D7 and the D8. So for the D7, you have to show that on average you earn monthly 1 month of minimum Portuguese wage, which at this time, 2024, is 820 euros. Whereas for the D8, you have to prove the main applicant that on average they earn 4 Portuguese minimum wages, which is 3,280 euros per month. And they have to do the proof of this amount in the 3 months prior to the application. So in terms of financial means, these are the two big differences. It's always important to bear in mind that if you are the main applicant and if you are bringing your spouse under your visa, you'll have to have on top of these financial requirements 50%, and for each child you'll have to have an additional 30% in respect to this amount, which is for each child. For the D7, roughly it's 250 euros. For the D8 is roughly a little bit less than 1,000 euros for each child.
Okay. That is really, really helpful to know, Sandra. So the D7, even though it's not specifically for people who are retired, it does sound like it would be very suitable for people who are retired, whereas the D8 is going to attract a lot of younger people, perhaps those who work remotely because they have the freedom to move to Portugal. They're often called those things, but they're not specifically only for retirees or only for digital nomads. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it is correct. So, and it's important to bear in mind, I think the name digital nomad visa can lead to a misconception. So, digital nomad visa is in no way limited to digital activities or activities that are digitally connected in any way. It's applicable for all those working abroad, irrespective of the nature of the activity and even irrespective of if the activity is digital or not.
Okay, and one question that I often get asked is people, I understand you can bring dependent children on either visa. People often say to me, well, my child is 30, he's still dependent on me because he hasn't got a job yet. Is that dependent in the eyes of the law in Portugal?
I think that would not be considered dependent in the eyes of the law. I believe just imagine if you're maximum 26 and you are still doing a master, this might be considered, or if you have some type of disability and you cannot work, for sure you can be considered dependent. If you are 30, you have no disability, no incapacity, and you are still studying, it will be much harder typically the Portuguese authorities will not consider you dependent with such age. Yes.
And what about dependent parents? If you have older parents that maybe they depend on you for care or for you to provide some kind of support, would that be possible to add them?
Yes. After a certain age, for sure. But if they are below a certain age, you have to prove that you help them consistently, so they are dependent upon your household. I just wanted to add about the D7 and the D8. Other than these requirements, so the financial requirements are different. The type of work is different. So the D7 is for those who have passive income. They don't need to work for. The D8 is for all those that have income connected to some form of work. Other than these, and other than the financial requirements that are different, the D7 and D8 follow almost the same regime. So all the other requirements are the same. The process is the same. Also, the residency requirements in Portugal are the same. The access to citizenship is the same. Basically, their civil and political rights in Portugal are the same. So we have two visas that in many situations follow exactly the same regime. The only difference is in the requirements, the financial aspect, and the type of activity that generates your income. These are the two main differences.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask you a difficult question, Sandra. I'm going to ask you about timeframes for the D7. I understand it's quite difficult to have a black and white answer about when you should submit your documents, when you will have that first interview with the consulate, when you'll get to move to Portugal, etc.
Yes, and I will return you a little bit the question, because I believe you must have some kind of experience with the Portuguese public authorities.
Sure.
And is it possible to give a strict, a rigorous time frame in which they will react? It's really difficult. So it's very difficult to give a rigorous time frame. I have seen people presenting papers within 4 months, 5 months, 7 months, but this is the one who is working in the field with all the different consulates, with all the evolution of the process. You cannot give rigorous, strict time frames, because this is not possible. It's extremely unstandardized. That being said, and with this disclaimer, let's be a little bit more optimistic. So just imagine a good case scenario that tomorrow you'd be having your appointment in the consulate. If you're going to have your appointment tomorrow in the consulate, typically within 1 month, the consulate or the VSF should be stamping your passport with a 4 months visa. Typically after this 1 month, you can come to Portugal because you have the 4 months visa to come to end the process. and within 5 months for this time, you can be already living in Portugal, and you will end the process in the IMA agency, in the immigration agency here. So a very fantastic scenario that has happened for some of our clients. Within 5 months, 4 months from starting the process, you could be in Portugal. But this is a good case scenario, almost a best case scenario. You can have a worst case scenario because just imagine sometimes when you try to schedule appointments from our clients, we get appointments. It's possible sometimes for the next day. Sometimes we can only get appointments within 3 months. So when we have, and it varies constantly. So if someone is looking for appointments in San Francisco, we don't know what will happen if we'll be having appointment for next month, for the next two months. At this point, we have some clients in San Francisco that are waiting for the passport to be stamped for 3 months. But this is not the norm. This is not the norm in most of the consulates. But I can never give very strict timelines when I'm talking about this. I would advise that if a person wants to move to Portugal, 1 year before moving to Portugal, although it can be done in less time, 1 year they should be preparing. Because, as you know, before you do the application in the consulate, you need to have an IF number, a tax number, which is something in the US similar to your social security number. You'll need to have a bank account in Portugal. It's important that you check if you are someone that are financial literate and is worried about your finances. It's important that you check how the bank that you'll be using is rated by international agencies. It's common that we have someone got a different bank than the one that we use, and afterwards they have extremely difficulties communicating the bank and doing the transfers. You'll need to have also a proof of accommodation in Portugal. You have to think which location is the best for you, where would you like to live, where would you find a place that is according to what you are looking for, your expectations, but it is within your budget. And we often have clients that want apartments for 1,000 euros in Lisbon, walkable areas to all the shops, to transportation, with sea view, and AC, brand new, with elevator, and sometimes we do a miracle, but the more time we have to prepare and also to manage expectations, it has a huge impact on the relocation itself. And bearing in mind that you have to think where you are going to live in Portugal, which accommodation you'll get in Portugal, just these two aspects, the location, the type of accommodation, according to your expectations, but within your budget. Lots of questions that people have about moving to Portugal, and it's better to address. The better you prepare relocation, and this is studied today, the better you prepare, the more you know, the better you manage your expectations. If you're going to a place where you feel really well, the kind of accommodation that makes sense for you, all this has a huge impact in the relocation. So I think to start preparing and working and hiring someone within 1 year for the time you want to move here, I think that's ideal. And if you want to move to Portugal within 1 year and 3 months, there is no harm in starting with an IF, the bank account, and doing some research and trying to do some scouting trips and trying to understand and manage well if you manage your expectations well, what you're looking for and what you'll find. I think the chances of having a successful relocation are much bigger. Although most of our clients are very, very satisfied, find the Portuguese people very welcoming, like the pace we lived here, which is a little bit slower than the hectic big cities. They love the food, but they love the more affordable way of living. But if you prepare and to have the time to choose the right place, to look what you can find, the more time you have, the better. So I would say, I will be completely biased, but I will say preparation, a good professional assistance can make a huge impact in your relocation to a foreign country.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You were going to say something else, were you, Sandra?
Yes, I was going to, I don't know if you want me to explain the D7 process. I already started, but I could go. So first, before starting the process in your country of nationality or legal residency, you need to have, in respect to Portugal, a tax number, which is an IF, which is the equivalent of the American Social Security number. You'll need to have a bank account in Portugal, and you'll need to have proof of accommodation in Portugal. Typically, a 1-year lease would be a good solution, although other solutions can be found for this. After that, you need to schedule your appointment in the consulate. In most of the places, you schedule the appointment, and only when there is a physical appointment, you'll present all the documentation. In some places where there are no VSF agencies, you have to submit the documentation on an early stage. Before scheduling the appointment, you have already to submit the documentation. There are lots of documents, so there are application forms, papers for the IMA to check your criminal record in Portugal, least there are many, many formalities. And when people hire us, we guide them, and we do several personal Zooms explaining fully the formalities. And by the time the person goes to the consulate, we've had 4 or 5 Zooms with each client. We check, double check, triple check all the documentation, taking into account also the specification of each consulate and of each place. And we make sure the people comply with every and each detail that is being asked, although the process is evolving and there are still discretionary powers, but we have managed to have many successful applications. We had 2 problems, one from a client that didn't ask a digital version of the criminal record. So when they got to the consulate, they didn't have a criminal record, but they had a paper saying that they were not able to get their fingerprints, so they could go there again. But we were able to overcome this, and this person asked for an additional time frame and could present this documentation from the consulate. We had an English guy that disappeared and said many things that we didn't understand very well, but other than this, we managed to have successful application, and this is about checking, double checking, triple checking. In terms of the process, then you have your appointment in the consulate. The appointment in the consulate is more about documentation checking, and when you have the appointment in the consulate, there are 2 possibilities. Typically, you leave your passport to be stamped within 1 month or 2, but it's also possible that if you want to keep your passport, that you tell them that you want to keep your passport. This is also a possibility. And typically, when they stamp your passport with a 4 months visa to end the process in Portugal, they normally give you, not always, but normally they give you the date for the appointment in the IMA. And then so typically 4 months by the time, or 5 months by the time you get the appointment, you have another appointment in the immigration agency here, where you end the process. For this appointment, you need to fill in specific forms, you need to update the documentation, you need to present some specific documents. And sometimes people are not always proficient in English. So for our clients, they always go with an experienced lawyer from our team, and that can make a huge difference. Just the other day, we had someone discussing because there was an address where there was no number, and it was the address, it was in the deed, it was in the land registry, it was in the document from the tax authority. But even though the person was challenging whether that was an acceptable address, but there was no possibility to look for another address. But we had to have a serious discussion in Portuguese, and for a foreigner or someone that's not fluent in the language, that cannot command the Portuguese language, I think that might be an additional difficulty that you could surpass. And perhaps, I don't know if you have been in the CEF, now I'm here in Lisbon, but it's not the most agreeable place. Perhaps one of the places in Portugal that is outside of Lisbon is different, but in other places it's not super agreeable. Perhaps it's one of the places where you're not to be by yourself in Portugal. The other day, one person from my team was pushed because she had priority just to get an information. So it's a place where you need to be it is important to be fully supported. In all this history, what we are noticing is that the D8, the Portuguese authorities are getting more and more demanding in terms of documentation. We recently had a client that he had a labor relationship, but he didn't have a written labor contract. And the Portuguese, the AIMA had an early intervention in the D8 process, and he had a proposal for denial of his application. But then we managed to explain the Portuguese authorities that both in Portugal, in the US, it's not mandatory when you have a labor relationship to have a written contract. And we also managed to prepare a declaration for the labor, for the employer to sign and notarize. And with that, we present allegations, and we were able to surpass this difficulty. Yes, we are analyzing still different procedures, different regulations. Very recently in Canada, that, as you probably know, Canada recently entered the AGA Convention. So until January this year, there was no apostille in Canada, but now they entered the AGA Convention, so there's an apostille. And we had a client that took a sealed criminal record in Canada, which was what we have been using for hundreds of American clients, and this was not accepted. So he had to come again and to present a criminal record apostille because they didn't accept a sealed envelope. The same happened to us recently in Manchester. So this is also something that is happening. And we noticed that 2 or 3 times now, some authorities, the consulates in the United Kingdom are not demanding, say there is no need to notarize certain documents such as the lease or the application or the personal statement. I think it's always difficult for us to navigate these. We were, for instance, in respect to the return ticket, we were some months ago almost thinking about just not asking the clients to get that. And all of a sudden, we had someone that in the end of the process, they asked for the return ticket. So it's a little bit tricky. The other day, we asked San Francisco directly whether people should get a return ticket or not. But they said they refer us to their list of documents. In their official list, there was the return ticket. So it's always a little bit difficult, but we try to help the client to navigate in a cautious way. Perhaps as a disclaimer, we ask for more documents and more formalities than they will need, but then we are sure that they will not face a big problem and that they can manage to proceed with the application successfully. But just out of little curiosity, for instance, in respect to the lease, it's also important to present a registration before the tax authority. They have asked for the mobile of the landlord. There was a case recently in Miami where they asked for a copy of the driver's license. So there's always little formalities, and I think in the office we prefer to over prepare. So by the time a client of ours reaches the consulate, they have a super organized files and they feel super confident in that moment and not fearful about what might happen.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Yeah, it's I think some people coming from countries that are much more direct and exact, perhaps like Germany or even the US, they expect things to be a lot more black and white than they are in Portugal. Portugal has beautiful blue skies, but lots of gray areas.
Yes,
So
that's true. But we have immigration lawyers, American immigration lawyers as clients, and also British immigration lawyers. And those who know what they are doing, they say, we would never dare to do this on our own. And this is also what I would say in respect to the United Kingdom or America. I would never dare to go there on my own without proper professional assistance. This is something I would not, after a certain age, you know that there are some money that's worth spending, at least if you
yeah.
have a proper professional guidance, and it's important. And in the US and also in London, it's not super nice to go through a procedure like this. So even in countries with less gray areas, I think this is still, and also the Germans, there are less gray areas, but they are still very very command. As you know, I like the German culture a lot. I speak fluent German, and I had lots of litigation cases with German lawyers, and it's not. It's the judicial takes much less than in Portugal, but it takes times. They still have to face some difficulties, so it's not everything roses.
I have a question then that came up while you were saying that, Sandra, which was, let's say I have gone to the consulate or VSF office and I have my 120-day D7 visa approved. Do I have to move to Portugal immediately? Like, does the clock start ticking then, or how long can I sort of wait to move, and then, still have 120 days in Portugal to get everything in order,
I
if that makes
think
sense?
by the time you have your passport stamped, just imagine today, 1st of September or
Yeah.
2nd of September, you'd have 120 days from this date. That would be, I have to do perhaps 2 of February, if you get your passport
Yeah.
today, 4 months, it would
Okay.
be 2 of February. And you have this time to end the process, and probably they should give you a date to have the IMA appointment by the 2 of February. If there are cases when people get the IMA appointment later, and in these cases you should be considered legal in Portugal. So I think you'd have to be in Portugal by the time they give you the IMA appointment.
Okay.
This is when it's mandatory for you to come to Portugal. Although we've had all kinds of situations, but we've had all those clients, also clients that once they got the passport stamped, they immediately come to Portugal, and they didn't leave Portugal until they have the resident permit card. So we had lots of clients that immediately after they got the passport stamp, they moved to Portugal, and almost in a definitive way. So I hope I answered your question. Is there still anything unclear?
No, there's nothing unclear. I was just wondering whether the clock starts ticking at that point for the sort of 120 days.
Yes, by the time you get your passport stamped,
Okay.
this is when the clock starts ticking for the 120 days. when
Okay.
they stamp your passport with a 4 months visa to end the D7 or the D8 process.
Now, and now another question related to timing that people have, and they're often quite nervous about, is rental contracts. Is they know I'm going to be moving to Portugal. Hopefully, let's say I'm moving in September 2025. I'd ideally like it to start, the day I arrive, so I'm not paying any money when I'm not there. Is that realistically possible?
This is possible. So in terms of rental contract, you can perfectly sign a rental contract in one day and establish in this contract this will only enter into force within 4 months, and you only start paying rents then.
Yeah.
In many cases, this is difficult because, as you know, the rental market is super hot and people are getting, the landlords have this extremely big power of negotiation due to the huge demand there is for rentals. So it might be difficult, but you can be lucky. Just imagine that you have a landlord who's who's the person who is leasing will end the contract within 4 months. For this landlord, it would be ideal that you'll
Mhm.
enter in the contract within 4 months. It's a negotiation matter. In terms of civil law in Portugal, you can negotiate and establish and create clauses as you wish, as the parties wish, as long as it's not unlawful or against the law. This is perfectly possible. It might be difficult to negotiate in most cases because sometimes we call for an apartment that we see in the Idealista, and within one day the apartment is already gone, or the apartments that are there there was already contract and they are no longer available. So it might be difficult, but you might get it. It's a question of discussion, but it might be difficult. Most clients end up paying for more months than what they paying before they really enter the apartment.
I can understand. I mean, it's obviously frustrating as a renter to pay when you're not there, but I can understand from the landlord's point of view, they don't want, like, if someone's leaving now and you're coming in 4 months, they don't want this little 4 month block where either no one's in it or they try to find a tenant for just 4 months, which could be quite difficult for them.
Yeah.
So I can see their point of view as well.
But it's difficult if you have a Portuguese lawyer contacting a landlord or if you're contacting directly. They are a little bit suspicious of foreigners. So this is something they normally ask for a grantor and ask for, I've heard people that they paid 12 months of rent prior to entering a house, and I think that's too much. I think the ideal, if you could manage to not exceed the limit of 3 for rents, that would be ideal, and not needing a grantor, but they also want to check the financial means of the person who is leasing. Yes, because they also had bad experience. So it's important to take into account both sides of the equation. We had recently a policeman, it was a client that rented a part in Oporto, and send a friend policeman to check whether we were real, where was our office, and it was important for him to talk with us. So because the client didn't have the time to look at the apartment, and he found that very strange, but he needed an apartment urgently for the appointment. And then he wanted to be sure we were real, we were doing a decent thing. So it was really important for him to talk with us. And
Sure.
then everything from that day, it was perfect. No problem.
Okay, I can understand from their point of view as well. If they get an email from someone who's not going to be there and they just want to rent it, it could be a little bit confusing
The
too.
other day, just following our conversation, I had an American client. It was a couple, I think they had 3 or 4 kids. And we got the appointment in the consulate, but the children were in different days from the parents. And I say, well, we may try to send an email to the consulate. It's not easy. but let's try. We may try it. And she said, no, 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 don't do it. I'm grateful I have the appointment.
Yeah.
I have been studying and reading and discussing expat groups for 3 months, trying to do this on my own. And it was hell. I'm so glad I found you. We repeatedly have this kind. I'm so grateful I have the appointment because I have been trying this for weeks and I don't know about the details. And she had already many things well done in terms of the process, many things properly gathered. But for instance, she didn't know the kids needs a tax number, an if. She had two kids above 16. She didn't know she need criminal records for those kids. So, it's little, as always, the devil is in the details. And even for us, we have lists and we have a model, and we have a model for Manchester and a model for London and a model for San Francisco, and now from Miami and another one from Houston. And we try and possibly we ask the clients to get everything done and to have all the formalities so they have no risk of getting the process not approved.
Okay. It sounds complicated to sort of keep track of all these different constellations with all their
Yes,
different
and
requirements.
the process is evolving, Now we are noticing, for instance, that the IMA is having an intervention in an early stage, which was not the case with CEF. And we are noticing also that the IMA in the second part of the process is less demanding, much less demanding than what CEF used to be. But we never know because the law is not black and white. So there are many, many things that are not written. And so many things are unwritten rules. So we have to understand how the process is evolving.
Some people
Yes,
might have seen.
we've had hundreds of clients, and now we ask for the client to give feedback, how exactly, in a practical terms, was each appointment, so we can gather more information and prepare better for all other circumstances.
Okay. Just with regards to IMA, some people might be aware that there is a sort of a partial strike happening with IMA at the moment. I thought it'd be good to sort of discuss what that is and isn't, because I think some of the headlines, at least the ones I saw in English, suggested that the whole place was closed down. That isn't the case, is it, Sandra?
No, it was not definitely not a good publicity for Portugal. We had several IMA appointments each week, sometimes 6, sometimes 8, sometimes 10. And until now, we didn't have any appointment postponed because of the strike. So the strike is limited to extra hours. The IMA is still difficult to get appointments for the IMA. So that won't, but there was a backlog before. But from a practical point of view, we didn't see the IMA postponing any of the appointments. So hopefully, I think things will get better. And this we didn't see, we working in the field and working in the industry, we didn't see a big impact from this strike. It was bad publicity, it was lousy publicity for Portugal, but from a practical point of view, we didn't see a big impact.
Okay. Now, one question that I had, people asked me in various different forms, was they were sort of getting a little bit confused between or wondering about the differences between the Schengen visa, this sort of 90 days in 180 days that they get to come to Portugal as a tourist. And most people moving to Portugal use that to find their apartment, to maybe, decide where they want to live, do a scouting trip, that sort of thing. And then they come on this other area visa, which is 120-day D7. And they were wondering, once they come on that 120-day D7, can they then travel within the Schengen area, even if they've, say, already spent 90 days within the Schengen area? Does that make sense, Sandra? I know it's quite confusing.
I would say yes, because but mainly this 120 days visa, the purpose is to end the visa process. But until now, as you know, we don't have borders within the Schengen space. So I've seen people are not having problems with these, but it might be a little bit of a gray area. There might be some gray areas there, and we never know how the IMA will react to this. So I think it's better not to overdo in that respect, or perhaps to try to ask specifically if they would allow such traveling. But I would say yes. I would say typically a person would not have a problem with that.
Okay. And when you were talking about attending the first sort of interview with the consulate or VSF, depending on which organization is responsible, could you explain what that's like? Is this an interview where they ask you, why do you want to move to Portugal, or is it more of a document checking
Yeah, it's
appointment?
more of a document checking. Basically, they won't interview in terms of motivations or your political views, nothing of that. They will take a look of at your documents. Basically, this is it.
Okay. And some people are asking sort of what's the difference between IMA and VSF? So maybe you could just very briefly explain that.
So, the Portuguese government and some other governments delegated their powers when the process starts in your country of nationality or residency in many locations. For instance, in the US, in many locations, but not all of them, the Portuguese authorities delegated the formalities, the bureaucracy, to an international company that takes care of visas, and it's called VSF. But in the VSF takes care of the formalities, but the consulate is the one, the Portuguese consulate is the one who decides. This is in your country when the process starts in your country of nationality or legal residency. The IMA is the immigration agency, the foreign borders agency here in Portugal, where
Okay.
you end the visa process.
Perfect. That explains everything. So I think we'll also just touch on the D8 a little bit, seeing as it's so connected to the D7. We spoke a little bit about timeframes. I know we weren't able to put an exact timeframe down, but for the D8, would you say there are any differences in timeframe compared to the D7?
No,
Okay.
they are treated equally. I say more or less the same time frame. I repeat, so the D8 is for all those that have active income, irrespective of the nature. It will have to be foreign sourced. What we notice that in respect to the D8, the authorities are getting more and more demanding. What they initially didn't ask for, as you probably know, we are having the D8 for about 2 years. The Portuguese authorities are getting more demanding, and we notice, as I told before, an early intervention of the IMA that already takes a look at the process in an early stage. They many times they want, if you can provide a contract that proves your professional relationship with a foreign entity, it's important to show. They have been asking for, if you have a company, documentation from the company and from your accountants, tax returns. If you have a labor contract, it's important to have in the contract or a declaration from the employer stating that you're allowed to work remotely. They ask for the receipts to prove they ask for your bank account extracts, your bank statements to see that you receive the minimum amount in the 3 months prior to the initiating the application. So I think they are getting more and more demanding. The process is beginning to have its form. And there are many documents that you have to gather, and there is not an official list in respect to this documentation.
Okay, and just from your personal opinion, Sandra, why do you, it seems like they are quite demanding with the D8 and becoming more demanding, and the income requirements are so much higher, but the D7 seems to be quite flexible. Why do you think there's such a difference between the two?
I don't know, but I don't know. But I think they want to make sure that a person really can provide from themselves when they are in the D8. But I would say that the Portuguese, and I talked, we were in the consulate in San Francisco, and it was understood that the Portuguese government wanted more entrepreneurs, people who'd start activities here. And we noticed also that in the NHR. So there will be an NHR for those who create innovative projects here in Portugal. So I think, and for the digital nomads that will go to remote areas. So I think this is what the government, the Portuguese government wants, and will incentivize more and more in the future. So people who are entrepreneurs, who have digital activities, who have innovative projects, who helped develop the country. I think there is definitely the Portuguese government want the D8 people, and perhaps the D7 will have in the future more and more financial demands. But this is the practice, because the D8 is quite recent. We have only 2 years of the D8 in the law in respect to the D8 in force, not yet 2 years. So perhaps now it's getting more clear what you have to prove and what you have to present to show that the Portuguese authorities are sure that you have these financial requirements and that you have a professional relationship with a foreign entity, and you have foreign sourced income in a way that you can show the Portuguese authorities you can provide for yourself.
Okay. Now, one visa that we haven't touched on too much yet is the golden visa. People ask me about that from time to time. First of all, Sandra, it would be helpful for people to know, because sometimes they're weighing up, do I go for D7? Do I go for golden visa? Could you sort of give an overview on what the processing times for the golden visa are like now compared to, say, the D7 or D8?
First I will say the differences.
Okay.
Both the D7 and the D8 are residential visas. So they require you to reside in Portugal, to have your family life centered in Portugal. Whereas the golden visa allows you to reside if you want, but you are not obliged to reside here, and to center your family life and your life in general, and to have Portugal as your formal residency. So this is the big difference between the golden visa. So and the D visas. So for many people that would like to have the possibility to reside in Portugal, or later to acquire a Portuguese passport, but are not in the conditions to reside in Portugal and to make Portugal the center of their family life, the golden visa might be an option. All those that can reside in Portugal partially and can center their family life in Portugal, it's not worth to go for the golden visa that requires a huge investment. They have the D visas. And it's very important to say, because many people are not aware of this, that the D visas also grant you access to citizenship in a very not demanding way after 5 years of residing in Portugal, if you do know the language. So this is also the D7 and the D8 are also a very interesting path to citizenship. In respect to golden visa, it's a good process for all those that cannot move to Portugal and cannot reside to Portugal yet, but want to have the safe harbor for their lives and for their families. Just imagine in Dubai, people that are working there, once they end their work phase, when they are no longer working, in most of the cases, they can no longer live there. So, and many times they don't want, many Indians don't want to go, or many Arabs don't want to go. In some cases, they don't want to go to their home countries, the countries of birth. And for all these people, Portugal, they might want to have a second option in Europe, in Portugal, that may grant you access to Portuguese citizenship in the future, And also, once you are a Portuguese citizen, you also are an European citizen with the political and civil rights of an European, with the possibility to reside, to work, to travel, to retire in any European country. So this is the golden visa. I think the golden visa was an interesting option, and it is an interesting option for visa. Uh, Now there is a problem with the IMA, and the golden visa is taking very long to proceed. So to speed up and make things happen, we have many times to go to the judicial, to an administrative injunction to get the process moving.
Okay, so you're actually having to sort of force their hand to get
Yes.
things moving. And I understand people have been waiting for at least sort of 18 months, maybe even longer, to actually
Even
get their.
longer, yes.
Okay.
And we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I go very often to IMA, such as my team, and we ask if there are any updates about the golden visa. And we have the impression they are almost not allowed to talk about that. So there is no, but let's see how the process evolves. I think in this sense, in respect to the golden visa, the Portuguese authorities are not doing a good work for Portugal. I think if you want to end the golden visa, you should end it. If you want to keep the golden visa, you should keep it as we had before the pandemic. So maximum 1 year to proceed, and 1 year was already a long time, because there is no reason why when they are taking your biometrics, they should immediately issue your golden visa card, because this is what they do with an identification card in Portugal. So we don't understand all these backlogs. It's a little bit hard to understand, and I think this is bad publicity for Portugal. Portugal is a country that has respected in many situations all those people that invested in Portugal, and has been a good student and has obeyed to international rules and to the European Union. So I think this doesn't make sense, that Portugal should be more transparent in this respect. If Portugal doesn't want a golden visa, they should end the golden visa. If they want a golden visa, they should have even more demanding rules, but it should be transparent, clear, straightforward. I think the golden visa is a very was the Portuguese authorities are not doing a good work for Portugal, and many of the international agencies, sometimes with the golden visa, are saying they prefer other countries, which is understandable, although it's a pity. Although my clients say we will always love Portugal, so we would go for it despite the formal difficulties.
Yeah, it is a shame, and it's a shame that it isn't clear that you know, why there is such a backlog with that compared to other visas. So I get the impression from what you're saying, just to summarize, Sandra, that if you are planning on moving to Portugal, you qualify for a D7 or D8, those are the way to go. If you maybe aren't yet ready to fully move to Portugal, or you don't qualify for them, consider the golden visa, but be aware that there are long processing times at the moment.
But we have several clients that had decided to go for the golden visa, and it's taking long to proceed, but for them it's not a problem because they don't want to move to Portugal now. So
Yeah.
for many of our clients, this is not a problem. So if you want to just to have a second option in Europe for a family, I think the golden visa could be a possibility, as long as if you are aware that it will take time to proceed, and this is what we have at the present moment.
Okay. Now, one thing that I hadn't come across too much before, but Portugal's reader pointed it out to me, was something called Article 116, which allows foreigners who have long-term residence permits in other EU countries to live and work in Portugal. Could you sort of explain just a little bit how this works for those who don't know, like
Yes,
myself?
this is a possibility, but you have also to go through an IMA procedure, and you have to get an IMA appointment, and you have to prove that you have the financial requirements, the typical things, but you just bear in mind that you have to go through, you have to get an IMA appointment And as you know, it can be a little bit difficult.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about renewals then, because a lot of people come to, they come after their 2 years, it's time to renew, and they're wondering, is this going to be the same process as what I initially went for, or will it be easier now that Portugal already
No,
has my documentation?
it's easier. You
Okay.
don't have to the D7, as you know, it's mandatory that in many times D8 is also the way to go. You start the process in your country of nationality or legal residency, whereas the renewal is done in Portugal. You have to get an IMA appointment, and you just have to show that you still keep the requirements for the visa, so that you still have the income, that you still have the accommodation. It's the basics, but it's not a new process. You just have to show that you still have you still meet the requirements for the visa. So it's much less demanding. It's about confirming that you already have the documentation for the visa. The only difficult part is to get the IMA appointment. This might be difficult.
Okay. So how does one get an IMA appointment then? How difficult is
So
it?
you call, there are several numbers to call. Lately, they have been saying they have no vacancies whatsoever. You can also send an email and ask for the appointment for the renewal, and basically this is it.
Okay.
These are the two possibilities.
And will I get a notification when it's comes time to renew? Will they send me a letter or an
No,
email?
they won't.
Okay. Now at the 5-year mark, people also have the opportunity to apply for permanent residency. Would I presume I need to contact IMA to do that as well? Is there a different series of appointments that they have for permanent residency as well as temporary residency?
Yes, it's different appointments, but you go through the IMA to this. Please bear in mind, for the permanent residency, you also need to have an A2 level of Portuguese.
Okay.
You don't need to show a strong connection with the Portuguese community, but it's also mandatory that you show that you have a basic level of the Portuguese language.
Okay. Now, for people who are returning to Portugal who are Portuguese citizens, they presumably don't have to get a visa like the D7 or D8. What do they have to do, though? Should they register with their local council?
No, it's not
Okay.
mandatory to register before their local council. Perhaps it's important before the civil registry to change their address and to
Mm-hmm.
say that they will be residing in Portugal. For all those that were living abroad and are moving to Portugal, I think it's important to know that there are very, very interesting tax benefits. They may benefit to a bonus of 50% less taxes yearly, which is
Yeah.
quite important. And they also may receive a significant amount of money if they are going to create their own job or their company or their activity. So there are very interesting benefits for all those that decided to return to Portugal.
Okay, that's very interesting. And then I assume they would already most likely have had a NIF. Would they need to change that to their Portuguese address so Finances knows that they're tax resident in Portugal again?
Yes, they would have
Okay.
to inform Finances that they would be tax resident again. Yes, and they should apply. I think the 50% is automatic,
Okay.
and but if they want to have some money from the state to create their own job or their company, they should apply. They
Okay.
should to to present a business plan and certain documents, but it's important that they have a time frame to do it.
There's another example of them trying to incentivize people to start companies or to
And
attract outside.
they can even, there's also sponsorship from the Portuguese state to pay even the ticket plans to move to Portugal and also the transportation of your furniture or luggage or things. You may receive some money from the Portuguese state government, which is not irrelevant, which is quite good. So there are lots of incentives for those that want to move to Portugal after living abroad.
Okay, that is very nice. And one last type of visa that I sometimes get asked about is sort of student visas. People are looking like, maybe I don't qualify for the D7 or D8, but what about the student D4 and D5 visas? Could I come to Portugal and do a degree? Could you maybe sort of explain firstly what the difference between those two visas are, and then the sort of practicalities around doing this?
Yes. So the D4 is
Mm-hmm.
the visa for graduate students that would like to study in Portugal 1 year or longer, and is for also applicable for all those that would like to do volunteer work or a professional internship. For all those, they should use a D4. The D5 is for all those that already studied in Portugal and Europe, and it's about students' mobility. This would be the basic differences.
Okay, so if I'm already studying somewhere else in Europe, I would use a D5.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, we're getting through quite a lot of questions, Sandra, and we've actually answered all the ones that came in before. I know your team are working hard to answer all the current ones as well. I guess if there's anything else that you want to sort of speak to with relation to the D7, D8, how someone could have the most chance of getting an effective application.
I think to have preparation and professional assistance, it is quite important. Just to choose the location where you'd like to live, just to the little details. So just to, for instance, also Manchester recently didn't accept a sealed criminal record. They wanted people to have it apostille. Um, just to make sure we had also American clients, as I told before, that have lots of things very well prepared, but then they miss the NIFs, the tax numbers for the children, and they also miss the criminal record for the children above 16. So if you want if you cherish the process, if you are in the conditions to do so, I think a professional help might make a difference. And what we hear again and again, and this is, of course, this is not pretty and this is a little bit biased, but we have several clients saying, we're so glad we found you. You really wanted to solve our problems, to solve to our issues. We had some time ago a client that they had some minor criminalities in their youth. We've had several clients of those, and they tried several firms, and nobody assured they will solve the situation. And we also studied the situation according to the Portuguese criminal record and represent it quite well. We have done several times, and we assured that we could solve the problem, and we only accept fees after that. And they said, you were not just eager to get our fee, you tried to see the way to solve our problem, and you didn't hesitate to solve a problem that was not standard, that was quite complicated, and you made our dream of coming to Portugal a possibility. And they were extremely nervous before contacting us. And these are the kind of happy stories that we are also, as a team, very happy to be part of.
Okay. I will say that one of the things that I really like about your firm, besides obviously the transparency and the information you provide here, is that you also accompany people to the IMA interviews, which I think is a huge help for people. A lot of people assume that they'll get there and it'll be easy and straightforward, and if someone else has done the process, it'll be the same as them, and that the person on the other side will speak English, and that's not always the case.
That's not always the case. And in some cases, it's really, I think it's all over the world, these immigration agencies,
Yeah.
are normally not very, it's perhaps one of the few places where you don't have a pleasant atmosphere, and it's not a fault of those working there, it's just the atmosphere, and people are having hard times and having hard situations. So I think this is the kind of place where you really want to be with someone that knows exactly what they are doing. Um, I always find it a little bit unexpected, but very people that I would never expect to be very nervous. I see them extremely nervous by the time they get to the IMA appointment, trembling and see, and yes, it's also part or helping them to regulate their nervous systems and to navigate one more difficult situation. So, but this is definitely a place where you want to be with an experienced professional.
Absolutely. And for those that do want that support, we mentioned earlier about that 15-minute free consultation to the first 50 people. I'm going to send out an email right after this with Sandra's email address and with all the information you need to get that. If you do want to get it, be quick, because there were about 200 plus people in this, and she's only giving away 50 of these.
Okay. So please, if you want to contact us, please do, and it will be a pleasure for the first 50 to provide with a free consultation and to assist you if you'd like to work with us.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much, Sandra. Thank you. There's some unanswered questions, but I'm going to forward them onto your team so that you can have them, and everybody will get a copy of the recording and your email addresses.
Thank you so much again,
Thank
James.
you. Bye-bye.